Anyone came here for the first time? Over there? Or you already came a few times? Yes, no? Maybe? French? Vous parlez que français? Plusieurs fois déjà? Okay. Okay, so you know how it's going. Okay. Shri Shuka, please repeat after me. Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Karam Mahantam Nashakna.
Karam Mahantam Nashakna.
Tatakarena Samstitaha.
Tatakarena Samstitaha.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Karam Mahantam Nashakna.
Karam Mahantam Nashakna.
Tatakarena Samstitaha.
Tatakarena Samstitaha.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Karam Mahantam Nashakna.
Karam Mahantam Nashakna.
Tatakarena Samstitaha.
Tatakarena Samstitaha.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Kalamahantam Nashakna.
Karamahantam Nashakna.
Tatakarena Samstitaha.
Tatakarena Samstitaha.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Kalam Mahantam Nashaknat.
Karamahantam Nashakna.
Tataha Kalena Samstitaha.
Tatakarena Samstitaha.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Kalam Mahantam Nashakna.
Kalam Mahantam Nashakna.
Tatakarena Samstitaha.
Tatakarena Samstitaha.
Ladies.
Om Shumam Shatapastepe.
Am Shumam Shatapastepe.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Ganganayana Kamyaya.
Kalam Mahantam Nashakna.
Kalam Mahantam Nashakna.
Tatakalena Samstitaha.
Tatakarena Samstitaha.
Okay. Word for word. Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Shri Shukadeva Goswami said.
Shri Shuka Goswami said.
Am Shumam.
Am
Shumam.
The king named Am Shumam.
The king named Am Shumam.
Cha also. Tapaha Tepe
Tapaha
executed austerity.
executed austerity.
Ganga,
Ganga,
the Ganges.
the Ganges.
Anayana Kamyaya,
Anayana Kamyaya.
with the desire to bring the Ganges to this material world,
With the desire to bring the Ganges to this material world.
to deliver his forefathers.
Deliverance of
Karam,
Kalam.
time.
Kalam.
Mahantam,
Mahantam.
for long duration.
For long duration.
Na,
No.
not.
No.
Ashakna,
Ashakna.
was successful.
Was successful.
Tataha,
Tataha.
thereafter.
Thereafter.
Kalena,
Kalena.
in due course of time.
In due course of time.
Samstitaha,
Samstitaha.
died.
Died.
Translation, that is the English, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Shukadeva Goswami continued, King Anshuman, like his grandfather, performed austerities for a very long time. Nonetheless, he could not bring the Ganges to this material world, and thereafter, in due course of time, he died. Est-ce qu'on a besoin d'une traduction en français?
Je le fais ici.
Ok, donc je parle pas trop vite.
Ouais, c'est ça, ça serait.
Ouais. Ok. T'as réussi le verset ou pas? Ouais. Shukadeva Goswami continua. Le roi Anshuman, comme son grand-père, a fait des austérités pour un très long moment. Malheureusement, il n'a pas pu amener le Gange dans ce monde matériel, et après ça, comme le veut le temps, il est mort. Quelque chose comme ça. Okay, so I'm going to continue.
But to say it in English too.
Hein?
English.
Yeah, I said it in English already.
I didn't know.
Est-ce qu'il y a un Shrimad Bhagavatam en français ici?
Peut-être. Okay. So I'm going to read the second verse because there's no purport for the first one. Vilipastat sutastadvad ashakta kalameivan bhagiratastasya sutas tepesa sumahattapaha. Like Anshuman himself, Dilipa, his son, was unable to bring the Ganges to this material world, and he also became a victim of death in due course of time. Then Dilipa's son, Bhagirata, performed very severe austerities to bring the Ganges to this material world.
Ce serait bien si j'avais un Shrimad Bhagavatam.
Ouais, je peux traduire ça, les versets. Oui. Comme Anshuman lui-même, son fils, Dilipa, n'a pas réussi à amener le Gange dans ce monde matériel, et il est aussi devenu une victime de la mort. Le fils de Dilipa, Bhagirata, a lui aussi fait de très sévères austérités pour amener le Gange dans ce monde matériel. Going on with verse 3. Darshayam asatam devi prasana varadasmite ityukta svam abhiprayam sasamsa vanato nripaha. Translation. Thereafter, Mother Ganges appeared before King Bhagirata and said, I am very much satisfied with your austerities. I am now prepared to give you benedictions as you desire. Being thus addressed by Ganga Devi, Mother Ganges, the king bowed his head before her and explained his desire. Purport. The king's desire was to deliver his forefathers who had been burned to ashes because of disrespecting Kapila Muni. Alors, traduction en français. C'est bon? C'est fait déjà. Ok. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasate Deve Gaurapani Pacharine Nishishashunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you everyone for coming. There's a lot of people now, I'm a bit anxious. Especially because I realized I studied the wrong verse. But I can still say something. So, because you can see in those 3 verses, these 3 different kings, to obtain what they desired, they did a lot of austerities. So It's called tapas. So when we think of tapas, I guess we think of Mexican food when we're not used to it.
Spanish.
Spanish. Yes, you think, oh, tapas, nice. I want to have some tapas. But when you know the Sanskrit name, and you say, oh, I don't want some tapas, I'm okay. But still, we can see all around the scriptures that tapasya means voluntary acceptance of discomfort. So,
Did you read all the way to verse 5?
no, it's verse 3.
You're supposed to read the verse 5.
Am I?
Yeah, because there's a proper purport.
Okay, no one told me. Okay, because there was a purport on verse 3.
Yeah, it's like a...
He's
Tiny
giving a
purport.
purport.
Okay, so let's go all the way to text 5. Kopi darayita vegam patantya me mahitale anyata bhutaram vidva nripayasyera sataram. Translation. Mother Genjis replied, when I fall from the sky to the surface of the planet Earth, the water will certainly be very forceful. Who will sustain that force? If I am not sustained, I shall pierce the surface of the earth and go down to Rasa Tala, the Patala area of the universe.
Traduction.
T'as pas la traduction? Ok. Traduction. La mère Gange, personnifiée, a répondu. Quand je tombe du ciel sur la surface de la terre, l'eau va certainement être très forte. Qui va être capable de supporter cette force? Si je ne suis pas supporté, je vais percer la surface de la terre et descendre jusqu'à Rasatala, la zone Patala de l'univers, ça veut dire l'enfer. Kim chaham na bhuvam yasye naramai amrichantyagam mrijami tad agam kvaham rajam statra vichintyatam. Alors, texte 5, texte 5, translation. O king, I do not wish to go down to the planet Earth, for there the people in general will bathe in my water to cleanse themselves of the reaction of their sinful deeds. When all these sinful reactions accumulate in me, how shall I become free from them? You must consider this very carefully. Okay. Traduction en français.
On a là.
Ah, donc cette fois ça va. C'est verset par verset en fait. Des fois, il y a... Ok. Très bien. Ok. Purport by His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It's already 8:30. The Supreme Personality of Godhead says, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam raja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishami ma shuchaham. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. The Supreme Personality of Godhead can accept the reactions of anyone's sinful deeds and neutralize them because he is pavitra, pure like the sun, which is never contaminated by any worldly infection. Teji yasam na toshaya vane sarva bhujo yata. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33-29. One who is very powerful is not affected by any sinful activity. But here we see that Mother Ganges fears being burdened with the sins of the people in general who would bath in her waters. This indicates that no one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is able to neutralize the reactions of sinful deeds, whether one's own or those of others. Sometimes the spiritual master, after accepting a disciple, must take charge of the disciple's past sinful activities, and being overloaded must sometimes suffer, if not fully, then partially, for the sinful acts of the disciple. Every disciple, therefore, must be very careful not to commit sinful activities after initiation. The poor spiritual master is kind and merciful enough to accept the disciple and partially suffer for the disciple's sinful activities, but Krishna, being merciful to his servant, neutralizes the reactions of sinful deeds for the servant who engages in his preaching glories. Even Mother Ganges feared the sinful reactions of the people in general, and was anxious about how she would counteract the burden of these sins. Traduction ou ça, non? Ah, c'est bon? Okay, so now we all the way to verse 5. So back when we were in verse 3, 5 minutes ago, I was speaking about tapasya, which means voluntary acceptance of discomfort. So why would we do such a thing? Right? No one likes to suffer. Right? That's why it's called discomfort, or actually suffering. It's because we don't like it. It's the contrary of comfort or the contrary of enjoyment. So why would you do something like that? In the Vedas, it is prescribed that actually tapasya is the way to get rid of your sinful reactions from your past activities. Because in the Vedic viewpoint, there's no stoppage of life. So your actions from many, many past lives, they still continue to influence your life now. And you have many different things that happen in your life. Actually, everything is conditioned by what happened in your past life. Right. So you could ask yourself that, what does it have to do that if I make myself suffer, then the reaction of my past sinful activities will stop? You don't necessarily see the link between the two. Huh? I could be voluntarily enjoying myself, and why does it not get me rid of my sinful activities? So the Vedas, they're given by God Himself. And God is Bhagavan, He's the one who made this world. He's the Supreme Person. So He made it in such a way that actions that make us understand that we are different from this body are pious activities. And actions that reinforce this idea that we are this body, those are sinful activities. Why? Because when we act for our own purpose, most of the time, someone else has to suffer in the process. Right? That makes sense?
What?
Like, I don't know, you're late for prasadam, right? You're very, very hungry. You were painting the guest house all morning. Yeah? And you're like, okay, I'm very, very hungry. And then you arrive at the prasadam and there's just like tiny bit left of prasadam. And there's like 4 people. And you think like, oh my god, I will get my plate very, very fast. And I will be before them. Right? So you're running to get your plate. And the 4 other people, what do? They're thinking, oh, this guy is running to get a plate. I will get a plate before him. Right? So everyone runs, and then anything can happen. It's open, open space now. There's only 3 plates, and there's 4 people. So before you were very hungry, maybe those 4 people, you work with them, they're your friends. But then you think, oh, they will take my prasadam. They're not my friends anymore.
Is that a real example?
I don't know. Up to your judgment.
From his own life. From your own life.
Yeah, from my own life. So then you get a situation where your personal interest is conflicting with someone else's personal interest. And as a result, what happens? And everyone suffers. Right? Because then when people get angry, it says in the Bhagavad Gita, that's when we forget everything. Proper behavior. We might knock someone, and then it knocks the table, the table where there is the prasadam, and then prasadam on the ground. No one's eating. Right? So then everyone suffers. But if those 4 people, they did tapasya, they did voluntarily acceptance of suffering, they wouldn't have hurt anyone else in the process. Right? They would have said, okay, I'm very hungry, but probably this person is even more hungry than me. So I will let them eat. And acting in this way, it's a pious action. Right? It's not a sinful action. It still produces karma, but it produces positive karma. And there are some actions in the scriptures that are prescribed that are pious actions, but they are meant to atone for past sinful actions. Right? That's the exact same thing as someone going to jail. He does something bad and we want to rehabilitate him. Right? So, I don't know, he steals money from a shop or hurts someone, has to go to jail. And hopefully, if it works, then the person comes out of jail and he says, oh, okay, I did something bad, I don't want to do it again. So, that's the same with atonement and voluntarily acceptance of suffering. So, on one hand, it helps us not making other people suffer, and at the same time, it's also beneficial for us because we start to see that I have control over my own body and my own senses. I don't have to act every time my mind is telling me something. Of course, it's complicated sometimes. We don't want to think about it. We just think, oh, it's too much. I need this. But we can see day to day. Sometimes we can think, okay, this time is better not to speak something bad. This time maybe it's better to do something nice for someone else, even if I don't want. So where am I going with this? One of the ways to atone for sinful activities, it's bathing in the Ganges. Right? So you bath there, and then the Ganges take your sinful activities, and you come out pure. The problem is that the Ganges, she takes your sinful activities, and then if she takes too much, she might suffer from your sinful activities. Because she's very merciful, she takes all the sins. We hear this also in Christianity, that Jesus Christ came to take the sins of the world. Right? So, there are people, they are very merciful, they are willing to take the reaction for our sinful activities. As it says in the purport, it's the same for the spiritual master. So actually in the Bhagavad Gita it is said that there is 3 types of activities. Karma, akarma, and vikarma. Karma, it's the action according to scripture. That's the right action. It's performing dharma, performing your duty, and so on. Then there is akarma. Akarma is the sinful activity. No, it's vikarma.
There is no reaction, that is the service.
Yeah, so that's vikarma. That's the action contrary to the scripture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So vikarma is the action contrary to the scripture. So that's the sinful action. Right? Like in the Veda it says you should have nice cows and land, and you think, no, I will build a massive factory and I will put chemicals products everywhere and everything will die except my factory. Right? That's vikarma. That's sinful. So then you get akarma. And akarma is the action that doesn't produce karma anymore. And in order to perform akarma, we have to be pure. So the Genjis, the spiritual master, they're very merciful because they give us the opportunity to perform akarma. And akarma is the activity that doesn't produce any result, materially speaking.
Any reaction, you mean?
Yeah, any reaction.
There is a lot of result.
There is a lot of result, but in terms of reaction, there is no reaction, karmic reaction. So, what it means is when we have the initiation ceremony, the fire sacrifice, the spiritual master takes the reaction from our past activities, and then he gives us the opportunity to perform akarma. So, how does he do it? He does it by giving us gyan, by giving us bhakti gyan, by giving us the knowledge about bhakti, and by showing us by example how to live according to the scriptures. So, so yes, we only have 3 minutes left, so I have to conclude somewhere. By giving us this knowledge about bhakti, we can start to know about the spiritual world. And by performing akarma, we manage to still engage our senses in this world, because our senses need engagement, but at the same time we are getting purified. And when we get purified, we can start to meditate. And it's going on both at the same time, purification and meditation. So we can start to meditate on Krishna and Radharani and Vrindavan and the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam and all the different associates of the Lord. And at the same time, by performing akarma, we are getting through the stages of bhakti. So there's 9 stages, but I'm not going to go in all the details, and you already know them for those who are here. But one that is important is anartha nivritti. So anartha, it means the unwanted qualities. And actually that's something that's very interesting. Okay, I'm going to conclude on that because I like this point. Anartha, it's unwanted qualities. Right? So what it means is that the soul is pure, but it has unnecessary things attached to it. And the process of purification is not fighting against yourself, it's getting rid of material qualities that actually don't belong to your eternal identity. Right? So it's very inspiring because it's like you have, I don't know, a very dirty room with a lot of things everywhere. And you think, if you think like, oh, I'm gonna clean everything, I'm gonna like, everything will be nice and clean, and if you leave all the mess inside and you start to clean, you're going to take like a very, very long time, weeks and weeks. But if you start by taking out all the unwanted things inside this room, right, then the room is empty. And then you just have to dust a little bit and it's clean. So it's the same for us when we go through anartha nivritti, when we go through this process of purification. We are just removing one by one the qualities that we don't need. Anger, greed, and so on and so forth. And ultimately we become pure. And when we become pure, our meditation is very strong. And that's the mercy of the spiritual master, and that's the mercy of the different souls who offer to take our sinful reaction and also actually do something about it. They don't just take sinful reaction, but they also give the knowledge that we can not perform sins again. Okay, we got 8:45 on my watch. So if you have any question, actually I should have stopped even before that. But if anyone has questions or protests or points to add, please.
You didn't explain what is the activity that doesn't produce good or bad karmic result. What is the activity?
Yeah, well,
you said meditation, but that's not enough.
I mean, that's not an activity per se. Like, it's not like the activity is cleaning the temple, or the activity is chanting Hare Krishna, or the activity is going on Harinam, or the activity is cutting wood in the forest.
I'm looking for the word devotional service to the
Yes.
Supreme Lord.
Yes.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here you go. That's it. That's devotional service to the Supreme Lord.
Julian has something.
Yes.
I was asking myself because at the moment you say sometimes it's good to force yourself to do a good service, like even if you don't want to, so that you have I think yes, like good karma or something like this. But then after here at the end you also said sometimes it's better to just let the good quality of the soul natural being there.
Yes.
And I was asking myself, is it always, is it a good way to force yourself? Maybe it will not crystallize, the ego, in the sense that he will not be, maybe do it, but not with the heart, and so it would not be sincere,
Yeah.
Like this.
Well,
I don't know if my question is very.
I mean, I will try to say something. Okay, so we take our knowledge from three sources in Bhakti. We take the knowledge from Guru, so it's our spiritual master. Sadhu, c'est les gens saints, it's holy people, and Shastra, it's the scriptures. So the spiritual master or the sadhus, they will give us service that we can perform. Right? So it's a personal relationship. The spiritual master will say, okay, this I think you can do, this one I think you cannot do. For example, Srila Prabhupada, when he came to America, he said to his first disciples, you have to chant 64 rounds every day. You know how we chant rounds. And they said, oh, it's too much, but we'll never be able to do it. So they negotiated, and Srila Prabhupada said, okay, you chant 16 rounds. Right? So there is room for communication with devotees, and they can push you a little bit, but so that you can make progress, but at the same time not say like, why you're not a pure devotee now? You should be more devoted or something. You know, it's both at the same time. It's like learning an instrument. It's, I don't know, you're playing the guitar and you kind of learn, but you know, you do it once a week, you're not serious, you're not going to progress, you know, you're just going to do the same thing over and over again. But if you force yourself a little bit every day, then you're going to make progress. And in the beginning you force yourself, but afterwards it's becoming more natural. You think like, oh yeah, that's just what I do. Like every day at 5 p.m. I do 30 minutes of guitar, right? So the idea is that our material qualities, they will always push us to do something for ourselves, right? So actually that's why we value good qualities like, I don't know, tolerance or being humble, because it means it makes us make an effort, you know, like going against our first desire. Like this example for prasadam, you just go, I want the prasadam, and then you think like, okay, no, I will not like impose myself on others like that. That's one example where doing something good, it's not like easy. It's not something that comes easily. That's why we also consider it good, because it requires an effort to think of someone else, to, you know what I mean. So again, where am I going with that?
But just in this case,
Yeah.
it's a little bit different because you don't do something that is bad, but what about something for cleaning the temple? You
Yeah.
force yourself about cleaning the
Yes, once again, it's what we do the service for, it's for getting purified. So if you have this knowledge why I am doing it, it's because it's motivated by this desire to serve, by this desire to, or just by the knowledge that, you know, someone asked me to do it and they're devotees, and it's, you know, it's good in itself for all the aforementioned reasons. Don't want to offend anyone. Then you do it, but you do it with knowledge. So you know that I'm not just cleaning the temple because the temple has to be clean. You know what I mean? There's another dimension to it. There's this dimension that I'm purifying myself, I'm doing service for Krishna, I'm doing service for the Guru. So you're forcing yourself, but you're forcing yourself for a reason as well. Doesn't mean that everything you have to do is forcing yourself all the time. It's, you know, it's a question that's very general on a day-to-day basis. I think the good measure is always do a little bit over what you would consider doing. You know, not too much that you become like, well, it's too much, but do a little bit that, okay, I did something good for my spiritual life, I did something good for devotees, or I did something, you know, whatever your motivation is in bhakti, you can, you know, have a desire to please the spiritual master, or have a desire to, I did it because scripture said it, so it's nice. It's all good reasons. We don't have all the same motivations, but ultimately the goal for us is Krishna. So we all get there by different ways. Some devotees really put an emphasis on service to devotees, otherwise on, how to say, more like scriptural following, more on performing service, in practical services. Again, it's depending on the person, depending on the spiritual master, depending on the relationship you have with him and the other. The idea of the Veda is that it's very broad so that it can include everyone. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he says that you surrender fully unto me and you serve me and you think of me 24 hours. And then he said, and then if you cannot do that, then you can work and offer the fruit of your activities. He gives fruit of your activities to me. He gives different processes, but they all lead to him. So that's what is amazing with the Vedic scriptures, is that it's meant to include everyone, and actually it's even meant to include people who are not spiritual at all and who don't care the Vedas still make so many rules so that ultimately they can get a better birth, and maybe they offer some puja to some demigod, or they do some service for getting some particular result. And you can see all in the Vedic scriptures that there's so many demons that do bad things, and they still get liberation, or they get to interact with Krishna himself. It's meant in a way that everyone can be included in this spiritual life, regardless of what is their motives. So it's very nice. That's something I find very inspiring, that it takes everyone at whatever level they are, and it gives them an opportunity to advance towards that goal. Yes?
Yes, thanks for your answer.
Yeah, sorry, it's a bit long-winded.
It inspired me.
Okay.
I understand that maybe this is why we need a guru to indicate and be
Yes.
with a good, des bons conseils, quoi.
Ouais. C'est ça, ouais, c'est pour ça que c'est très très important, parce qu'il peut voir qui tu es et te donner un service que tu peux faire, et il sait que tu vas t'épanouir et que ça va être bien pour toi, bien pour les autres. Bref, je vais continuer. Okay, last one.
So, I have this experience that sometimes, especially when I'm with my family, I feel that I'm such a good, unselfish, spiritual person.
Yes.
And then I become judging them that I'm so much better than them. So, so how do I deal with this pride I have that I am a good little spiritual person, kind of,
Well,
or unselfish person? I become proud that I'm so good and they are bad.
yeah. Well, it's when we are not in spiritual life, and I don't know, we go to our job, and I don't know, we are an accountant. We say, out of this whole office of accountant, I am the best accountant. And then you become frustrated with your job, and you're thinking, okay, now I need some spiritual experience, right? And you come to the temple, and you think, wow, out of this ashram, I'm the most renounced person. It's just the same thing. You just go to the different place, and there's just different settings, but you're doing the same thing. And ultimately, it's not like you have to identify every bad quality and work on every one of them differently. There is anger, there is pride, there is so many different ones. There is greed. Anyway, so there's 6 of them. You're not gonna like pinpoint all of them and think like, okay, this one I have to, it's really bad, so this one I really have to solve, but this other one is kind of okay, so I will not, The root problem is that I think I am my body, right? So it just comes from there. The verse I prepared, I wanted to say there's 5 different types of ignorance and many different things, but didn't get to, I don't know what happened. Anyway, so because you're thinking, I'm this body, and then you can measure things according to this body, right? So you can measure like, okay, my humbleness is like this, but Vidura's humbleness is like this. So I'm better, actually it's different. My humbleness is again yours. So I'm thinking how I'm so good. Sitting on the big seat and then telling him what to do. So that's, if you think about it, right, that it's gonna continue to exist, right? Because if you just are engaged in material considerations, then those material considerations are going to have value, right? For example, like you buy brand new shoes, they're like bright white. You go in the street and you're thinking like, okay, there is a puddle of water, I cannot walk here. And here there is some mud, I also cannot walk here. And there is this dirty guy over there, maybe he will walk on my shoes, I also can, right? But if you think like, okay, I don't care, it's just shoes, then you're gonna walk everywhere. Right? So if you think about Krishna, if you think about the scriptures, if you think about service, then you're not thinking about, I am too proud, or I am too... if you think of serving devotees, you're not going to think like, I am too angry, or I am, you're just going to be engaged in something else that's spiritual. So it's gonna get treated by itself. That's why we just chant and we do practical service, because that's what is in itself is going to change us. Not thinking like, okay, I have to do a 5-day seminar about not to get angry and get a little pins and like I'm not angry anymore. That's just by meditating on Krishna, by remembering. That's what I wanted to say. Smaranam. By thinking about him, because he's pure, you're going to get his qualities, right? Because he's spiritual, you're going to get part of his spiritual quality. Because we come from the same source. We're Jiva. We come from the same source. We have the same qualities as God, but in very little quantity. So by meditating on him, we're going to get a little bit of those qualities. And like it's the same thing. Srila Prabhupada, when he had his journal, he had this quote that says, where there is light, there's no darkness. And when there is darkness, there is no light. Right? So darkness means the absence of light. But when there is light, then there's no darkness, because there's already light. You know what I mean? They cannot coexist with each other. So if you have your spiritual concerns, then there's no material concerns anymore, because it's one or the other. No. But we are not there yet, so we also have to be realistic and think like, okay, in our day-to-day lives, think like, okay, this is proper, that is not proper. But you live in your body. You're not gonna like take your mind or like cut it, take out your brain and think like, okay, you're too proud, you're grounded. I'm gonna put you here and just wait for 5 days. It's sometimes you get proud and you don't realize, and then someone tell you like, oh, you're really arrogant, and then you just stop 5 minutes and you're like, oh yeah, and you say sorry. And this world is also meant in such a way that we are going to make something sinful. It's like you cannot avoid it, materially speaking. But if you have your concern like serving and so on, if that's really what you want, you make mistakes. But Krishna says also in the Bhagavad Gita that there is no fire without smoke. Right? So there's no action without mistakes. This is the human condition, we make mistakes. But as long as the desire is there that I want to do the right thing, I want to, then even if you make mistakes, the fact that you try to do the right thing, it's more important than the mistake you make in the way. So you're in the temple, you're doing service, and you're thinking, I'm doing such a great service, I'm the best singer, or I'm the best cook, or you're cooking for Krishna. You might not have the best mentality, but because you're still cooking for the deities, you're still doing service, that's what is most important. And the rest will come with time. Krishna always has a way to show us when we have something that should be corrected. Okay, sorry, I will stop here. It's already 9, 15 minutes over. Please forgive me if I offended anyone. And thank you for coming, tolerating me. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.